This is Sybert signing in to Tiberium Wars on the map Tournament Arena and into this best of 7 from the Winter Meltdown Tournament Finals. It is spawning as the pink GDI in the top left corner. We do indeed have Sh0ckTr34tm3nt smurfing as Sh0ckTr34tm, and in the bottom right side, the recently retired Kane's Wrath player, it is BikeRush own. Which apparently recently retired from Kane's Wrath does not mean retired from Tib Wars. So I don't know, maybe BikeRush just wants to play Tib Wars while he's, you know, fooling around with Grey Goo and whatever. Which Grey Goo did just come out today at the time of recording this. So I've been playing a bit of that. Been pretty interesting. I should be releasing a video with my thoughts on that at some point in the near future. I want to put a couple more hours into it before I really get underway. At any rate, this is the best of 7. There is, I believe, $25 on the line. BikeRush owns decided to, pretty last minute, just host a, to fund the prize pool, I should say, to go ahead and sponsor that prize pool. But game number 1 is going to be predetermined to be on Tournament Tower. I don't actually remember. Is this even called Tournament Tower? I think that's what it's called. I almost called it Tournament Arena, and then I knew that was wrong, and then that threw me off. But GDI Mirror, for now, BikeRush owns going to be base creeping up to the high ground, which not necessarily a lot of players do. I mean, most of the time, players will go their refineries here, and then they'll move their MCV to about there-ish before expanding up to the high ground. But with a best of 7 format, we are pretty much guaranteed, well, no, we are guaranteed those 4 games, and hopefully with players like Sh0ckTr34tm and BikeRush, we're going to see some entertaining games. We're not just going to hopefully see Pred Spam versus Pred Spam or Pit Spam versus Pit Spam. Hopefully we're going to be seeing things a little bit more interesting. Now, this APC is one that we should be keeping an eye on if we're going to be a good observer in this game, which, let's be honest, sometimes I'm a pretty bad observer. But hopefully we'll keep an eye on that one APC to figure out if that engineer ends up capping anything. BikeRush owns establishing himself a second refinery on the high ground. He's still just rocking this one on the low ground, going to be establishing a second refinery on that low ground right there. And also good on BikeRush, keeping this one APC in the back, keeping it away from the direct fire of his opponents. Of course, he did kind of got taken surprise by that Pitbull, but of course he wants to keep the APC with the engineer safe. And although the economy is a little bit quicker to get up, it's a little bit cheaper to get out in Tiberium Wars. You don't want to be throwing away engineers if you do not have to. Although it looks like we've got 3 harvesters on the low ground, 3 harvesters, 4 harvesters on the high ground, so a total of, well, I guess 5 refineries, 8 harvesters for BikeRush owns, and a distinct lack of harvesters for Sh0ckTr34tm. Now, he's got another engineer out, but what is he going for behind this? Because his extra refineries are significantly delayed. Interesting, right into an armory, potentially for that composite armor. I guess he could be going for power packs or scanner packs, although we will have to see. I would assume that it would be composite armor out of that armory. APC backing up. I'm not sure what happened to that APC engineer for BikeRush owns. It does look like it at some point it got pulled back. I'm assuming it didn't get cleaned up, although he may have sent... Sneaky Sh0ckTr34tm runs right into a minefield, but will it even matter? No, the engineer pops on out, it grabs that tower, and BikeRush's engineer, I'm not exactly sure what ended up happening with it. It's potential that he jumped it out of the... Aha, there we go. I know there's action going on somewhere else on the map, but that engineer, we did indeed fight it. BikeRush pulls pretty much everything back. There's the MCV. It is the second MCV, and he's up to that Tier 2. He's got his command post out, which means he can start going for Tier 3 if he wants. He may even try a base push, but again, BikeRush owns is known for this kind of sneaky stuff. He loves his engineers on the corners of the map. He loves just being sneaky and trying to outplay his opponent in that way. It's kind of a surefire way. Well, if he captures something, it can be a surefire way to get a winning edge in a game. Now, of course, BikeRush owns still has a fair amount of Tiberium on his backfield, while it is starting to get a little bit dried up there for Sh0ckTr34tm. And he has to be careful that he doesn't run too close to those harvesters with his engineer. He may just have it waypointed to come in like that. APC's coming in. He wants to make sure that he's distracting Sh0ckTr34tm, which is exactly what he's doing. Shock Treatment trying with another APC engineer in the south. Now, it looks like BikeRush is just going to be going for that Tib Refinery, and he's going for the build radius as well. Double Sonic Emitter gets placed down immediately. Why would you need to base push when you've got this sort of action going on? And he's going to be targeting down some of these harvesters. He might be able to get this guy in range with at least one of the Sonic Emitters. The other one may not be in range. Shock Treatment pushes forward on the front lines. A lot of infantry coming in, and of course that compo armor is going to be helping out. Juggernaut's going to be eating their way through the infantry though, and Sonic Emitter's also going to be here to help hold the lines. Shock Treatment needs to break the economy of BikeRush, but keep in mind, BikeRush can still run his economy, run his entire base rather, from the back end economy. And it looks like that engineer did get cleaned up, the APC as well. Now, rocket squads on the front lines are going to be starting to get cleaned up as more and more anti-infantry comes forward, and there's just not the numbers here that Shock Treatment needs. On top of that, he has to deal with this sort of, oh, the Sonic Emitter's cleaning up the MCV, and even though BikeRush didn't actually get the engineer cap, it doesn't even matter. Shock Treatment, I don't think, has enough forces following this up. No, he has almost no forces following this up to break BikeRush, and in a crushing victory, BikeRush is going to be able to take this game without too much trouble. Going for some engineers, he's just trying to make as much trouble for Shock Treatment as possible. Go for as many engineer caps as possible, and that engineer took a spot of damage, and it's just forcing Shock Treatment to sell off more and more structures to try to get out some units to kill off that engineer. He's into that low power mode, has to upgrade some of his power plants, which is not where he wants to be spending his money when he's got so much damage right at his front door. Grenadiers even being mixed in here, harvesters being pulled off the lines to go ahead and go for the crushes, but that Control X is good enough from BikeRush to split against the harvesters. Shock Treatment not doing a fantastic job of micro, but a good enough job of micro to go ahead and clean up the majority of those forces. And Shock Treatment, he will be able to clean up this base, quote-unquote base, I guess, if you want to call it that. No! BikeRush drops down double airfield. The DPS is not going to be enough from these Juggernauts, and on top of that, there's probably a couple of Sonic Emitters going to be following this up. Now, it looks like Shock Treatment may be able to clean up one, potentially both of those Juggernauts, but no, that is the end of the game. And it's like, even if Shock Treatment was able to clean up the base push, I don't know if I should really be using base pushes, that's kind of the wrong term. But even if he was able to clean up the airfields, the refineries, the Sonic Emitters, and the Juggernauts at his front, he still would have no economy, no infrastructure, no real production to contend with BikeRush. The tap out there going to be ending game number 1 of our best of 7. But can Shock Treatment stop the fury of BikeRush, or will BikeRush take home yet another tournament victory? Let's jump into game number 2 to continue this story, which takes us to Tournament Tower, and our red nod on the left side is BikeRush. And the man on the right side who needs your cheers, it's yet again a mirror, this time nod pink, it is Shock Treatment. And BikeRush being up 1-0 in a best of 7 is not going to feel too bad. And it looks like Shock Treatment going to be going 4 militant squads into the middle. He really wants this Tib spike. BikeRush not really committing too many units to it. As you can see, he went for the Tib silo sell-off, but he's not going to be able to secure that spike. He does have the faster refinery, which potentially will be a little bit more beneficial for him. 2 militant squads will be able to overwhelm just the single one of BikeRush, and also, considering the extremely fast militant squads from Shock Treatment, he's going to have no trouble at all chasing off the single squad of BikeRush. Now, this nice economy boost early on from Shock Treatment is going to be very beneficial, but is he going to be able to kind of steamroll that economy bonus into a win? Well, we will have to see. And Barstow Badlands, one of those maps that, I mean, primarily, I'm a Kane's Wrath guy when it comes to Command & Conquer 3. I love my Kane's Wrath. I also love my Red Alert 3. Not so much love for the Tib Wars, just me personally, but it's one of those maps that I hardly see at all, and it's one of those maps which is just so weird. It seems like it produces just some weird games, and maybe that's, again, because I don't see it as much played in Kane's Wrath, and I mean, it's basically never been played in any competitive match in probably the last 4 or 5 years, as far as I can remember. Probably the last, 3 or 4 years at least. Which means I never really know what to expect on this map. I've seen some base pushy type stuff. I've seen some big unit swells. Ah, we have an MCV cell sort of all in. There's the engineer that BikeRush should be targeting down, but it is going to be dual War Factory into Scorps. Now, the bikes are coming in, and bikes can tank a surprising number of Scorpion shots, and with this many bikes coming in from Bike, I don't know if Shock Treatment actually has the forces necessary to deal with this, as there's just so many bikes heading out across the map. Now, it's only one refinery for BikeRush owns, and it's double refinery, more harvesters for Shock Treatment. So he can take a little bit of punishment here. He can take a little bit of damage without really having to worry about it. But if he starts to get overwhelmed, then he's going to have to really start worrying about his choice in this game. And I'm guessing he just kind of read the fact that it was indeed an all-in coming from BikeRush owns, and he was able to identify that, and he decided the counter for it would indeed be those Scorpion tanks. And now he's got a nice number. BikeRush owns has been defeated. And it's like once he cleared out that number of bikes where he just had an overwhelming number of Scorpion tanks, he was indeed able to push Bike out of that game, and the score goes up 1-1. BikeRush owns is not invincible, and his dual War Factory bike buggy all-ins not unbeatable. But this is only the beginning of this series, so let's jump into game number 3 to see who wins next. And that takes us to Tournament Rift, the most played map, I should think, for Tiberium Wars. Certainly is for Kane's Wrath, but on the left side, as the pink nod, it is Shock Treatment. And on the right side, as the red expanding GDI, it is BikeRush owned. Shock Treatment able to even the score up with that very nice 1-1. And, of course, the tib spikes on this map. Oh, is he actually doing the Unleashed build? I mean, he's going... Okay, so he's only going 3 engineers. He's not going 4 engineers, which I feel like you need all 4 engineers if you're really doing the Unleashed build. He could also just be going for triple APC. And, of course, he's going to be running 1 engineer down immediately to this spike, because there's no real reason to not use that engineer to grab that spike just right off the bat. And Unleashed does these weird kind of, like, 4 spike capture builds where he builds 3 engineers and then goes fast airfield. But it's just going to be APCs, which is far more sensible. BikeRush owns also going to be deploying the outpost down in the south. He hasn't done too good of a job of going to be anti-scouting, but of course, since he did go for those engineers, he's going to be looking for the payoff in kind of the mid part of the game. I won't necessarily say late game, but we'll see how long the spikes survive, because that 25 creds a second, oh my word, that is just so good. Bike's going to be coming on out for Shock Treatment. He does have good vision all throughout the map. I mean, he's got the mid section of the map, he's got the lower section, and the northern section as well. So he's got, again, a good spread on scouts. He's got good eyes. He probably knows that BikeRush is going to be taking the southern 2 spikes. There's not a ton he can do about it. He can potentially, if he can focus down the engineers, that would be good, although he is going to be missing an opportunity to focus down one of these engineers. With this APC coming in here, that single militant squad isn't really going to be able to do anything as long as BikeRush owns does not mess this up, and BikeRush owns going to be dropping down right on the correct side of both of those spikes, able to capture those spikes without too much trouble. Now, there's an extra refinery for Shock Treatment. Kind of weird placement there, but he is most likely going to be just base creeping on down there. Otherwise, I don't know why he exactly placed that refinery there. He is going to sell it off, so he is going to be going for maybe not the same base creep that I was thinking he was. But BikeRush owns is going to be funding his expansion in the south. Dual refineries down here. He's got 2 refineries up here as well, getting that nice 4 refinery ratio. And he has just gone hard to the paint with this eco. He did manage, or Shock Treatment rather, did manage to get the crane down with that build radius, which means he can successfully start finishing his base creep down here. And this refinery is actually close enough to where it may be all right to keep for the first couple of rounds of Tiberium. As the Tiberium starts to get a little bit further away, maybe he wants to think about selling that refinery off. But for now, he's going to be all right. There's the Operations Center from Shock Treatment as well, but of course you have to go Tier 3 if you really want to be able to utilize that Advanced Power Plant upgrade. Which, I mean, seems kind of weird in retrospect, but I never thought it was weird when I was playing just regular Tib Wars back in the day. Tib Spike going to be getting focused down. A great move here. I mean, a great move. Just absolutely visionary move here. No, I mean, it's just a good move to focus down the Tib Spikes. Shock Treatment knows that extra 50 cred a second provided by these southern spikes over him is going to be absolutely crucial. And while those spikes certainly did pay for themselves by a wide margin, Shock Treatment doesn't want to let any more damage be done by them. Flame Tank 100% caught, surrounded, and will be destroyed by these pit bulls. And there it goes. Shock Treatment pulls back the Harvester, could potentially go in and start harvesting that Tiberium as all of the pit bulls have cleaned out. BikeRush is going to be making his way to the midsection of the map. He's got his crane as well, and he's got his 4 refinery economy to fund his way to the middle. Which, this is just crazy amounts of eco for BikeRush. Flame tanks being split to the top and middle of the map, maybe even down south as well. And Shock Treatment, when he sees this, he's going to be like, oh my gosh, you've got stuff in the middle of the map. You've already harvested like half of this field, which means it's more than paid for itself. And you stop both of my flame tanks, but here comes the Tib Catalyst Missile, gets both of the refineries, gets a harvester, maybe 2, 3 harvesters as well. That's not too bad of a shot there for Shock Treatment. And that's going to slow down the eco of BikeRush a little bit here, but is it going to be enough to really make up for everything? I'm not 100% sure, especially with this economy, which is going to be even potentially even better established in the mid-ground here. As BikeRush can drop another refinery there, he can drop another refinery there, he could even sell off those 2 refineries, and then he'd just have refineries so close to that Tiberium. There's going to be the scan activated from BikeRush, rushing in with his pit bulls. He's going to be looking to shut down the crane pretty hard, which will eliminate one of those build queues for Shock Treatment. There's a Laser Scorp upgrade for Shock Treatment. He's going to be able to do a little bit more damage to these pit bulls, but this is still a large number of pit bulls, and there's actually an engineer cap on that war factory. A nice move there for BikeRush. And actually, if he can shut down that MCV, then that'll be significantly less production for Shock Treatment. Also, with the dual sonic emitters in the north, absolutely brutal here from BikeRush. Insane amounts of economy, and he's just going to be funneling that into crazy numbers of base defenses. I'm not actually sure if he's got any more MCVs out. He's just got the 1 and the crane, but he's just got so much money. I can't imagine that BikeRush is actually spending all of this money. He is floating 7.5K, which is not as bad as Shock Treatment's 9K that he's floating, but really that's because Shock Treatment's production completely got shut down. One of his build queues got shut down, so he can't rebuild those war factories at a faster rate. And even this war factory is getting absolutely destroyed here. He just needs more production to be able to pump out the units to stop BikeRush. But even if he's able to stop BikeRush, he's not going to be able to stop the reinforcements that BikeRush has, because BikeRush simultaneously has, well, maybe not more money in the bank, but he's got more income than Shock Treatment by a wide margin. Getting back up to Tier 3, Shock Treatment is going to be able to get some of those higher tech units out. But already BikeRush has been on that Tier 3. He's been able to spam down those high-tech base defenses in such greater numbers than Shock Treatment. And I mean, even look at this. Shock Treatment is showing up to this field to get maybe, what is that, like his 2nd or maybe 3rd load of Tiberium from the center field, and it's almost completely gone. Total decimation here by BikeRush, and it looks like he's still got the touch. Now, Shock Treatment, as we've seen in games in the past, can indeed take straight-up macro games off of BikeRush. Not only can he defend BikeRush all-ins, but he can take some games off of BikeRush, as we've seen in the past. But this game, not so much. Zone troopers coming in, bikes and predator and pit bulls, rather, not even predator tanks, are necessary as the juggernauts raining down their giant shots from afar. Even the mammoth tank getting in on the action, and BikeRush may also be researching railguns. It doesn't even matter what he's got, because he can just move all of his stuff across the map, and that may be what he does in just a few moments here. As yeah, he's actually mixing in predator tanks. I think his plan at this point is to literally build every unit in the game that he can, and then move in and kill Shock Treatment. As he's actually going triple racks production on the front line. Comp armor most likely getting researched as well. And, alright, so we've got a reasonable defense being mounted, but 4, even 5 avatars and some rocket trooper support just cannot stand to the sheer numbers of BikeRush, as BikeRush is going to be pushing out across the map. He's long distance harvesting in the south here. He's got even more bikes heading in from the south. He's going to be able to hit what little economy remains with those bikes and kind of go in for a bit of harassment, if you will, while pushing in with rail guns at the front. I mean, not even on his Predator tanks or Mammoth tanks, just on his Zone Troopers as the Pit Bulls are getting shots in. The Rocket Troops are filling out the offensive line for BikeRush owns. And here, Shock Treatment is oppressed from all sides. He managed to rebuild his MCV, but again, even if he had money, he's only got those 2 war factories, and he just doesn't have the standing army to deal with the forces of BikeRush owns. And that is the end of game number 3. BikeRush owns takes 2-1, the lead versus Sh0ckTr34tm3nt, aka Shock Treatment. And just look at that economy graph. Man, that build from BikeRush owns was actually surprisingly just well-rounded. I mean, maybe if you go really fast, like heavy bikes or all-in or something like that, that's the way to punish that. But my word, that build from BikeRush owns, past the first couple of minutes, he's just going to have so much eco to counter your units. You're really going to have to outplay him at every stretch. And if you can't outplay someone in the eco game in Tib Wars, then it's going to be hard to outplay them in any other way. That'll do it for that game. Let's jump into game number 4, which takes us to pipeline problems. And in the north, as the pink GDI, we have Shock Treatment. While in the south, spawning as the red Scrin, it is BikeRush owns. I'm actually kind of surprised we're not seeing Crane first out of BikeRush owns, but he could just be going for an infantry all-in. He is indeed. Why? Well, let me just kind of assume that you're new to Tib Wars, because if you played Tib Wars very much, if you know how standard openings work on this map, then you already know why he's going infantry all-in. He's going infantry all-in because the standard build order on this map, because of the blue Tiberium, is to go crane, refinery into most likely power plant, and then either 1 or 2 more refineries over here while you start building up your other infrastructure. I've seen some players try to go, like, double refinery on the green field, stuff like that, but it's so much focus on eco early game. It's so much just building up over here and really making sure you're getting good saturation on your blue tip, because that provides you such a crazy eco boom for the mid to late game transition that you don't have anything to deal with a giant attack like a lot of descents. And this many descents, plus the buzzer shutting down the early scout by BikeRush owns, is going to be an incredibly powerful attack. On top of that, he stasises both of the refineries, and suddenly that locks out those buildings from Shock Treatment being able to use. And he's got the War Factory down. He would need so many APCs to really deal with this attack. He's able to throw down some watchtowers, and he's going to be able to clean up some of these units, but without any knowledge of this coming, it's just so nearly impossible to stop. As you can see, BikeRush owns sells off the stasis chamber there. He doesn't need it anymore. There's the kill of that MCV. And with the triple portal descent all in from BikeRush owns, it looks like this next game is going to be getting locked up. Now, technically, there are still some opportunities here for Shock Treatment to take the game. It's like one of those situations where it's technically he can take the game, but realistically, even if you try to crush the descents with your harvesters, it's just not going to work out in the game. And that will do it for game number 4. BikeRush owns takes a 3-1 lead over Shock Treatment. And in 2 minutes and 15 seconds, BikeRush owns is going to be putting himself into that match point position. Shock Treatment needs to win every single game from this point forward if he wants to take that gold. Otherwise, he'll be sitting with another silver against BikeRush owns. And that is not what he wants to see happen. And game number 5 takes us to Tournament Arena. This is where things get down to the wire, as the red GDI in the top left corner, the northwest position, it's BikeRush owns, up 3-1 versus the man in the south, the pink Scrin. That's right, it is going to be that fast expand to the blue, Shock Treatment. Sells the buzzer off, going to be getting actually a couple of descents. Now, there's a couple of things, no, he's just getting 1 descent, but there's a couple of things that you can do with descents. On this version of the map, you come over here with your descents, and you try to lock down the early expand from your opponent. But BikeRush owns, he's kind of been metagaming his opponent as much as possible, in these games. He hasn't really been going for the more standard stuff that Shock Treatment has been going for. We saw certainly the hard counter in that last game. And in some of the other games, I mean, Tournament Tower, maybe a little bit more standard there from BikeRush owns. Even Tournament Rift was a little bit janky, but I'm really curious as to what he's actually going to be doing with these extra engineers. I mean, one extra engineer, maybe you just go for the Southern Tib Spike, but that extra engineer, maybe it was even 2 extra engineers, that's something a little bit more interesting. APC's moving out from BikeRush's base is going to be telling Shock Treatment, alright, he's most likely got a couple of engineers inside of those APCs. I need to make sure that I keep eyes on those APCs and know where they are going. BikeRush owns most likely going to be moving down for the Blue Tib expansion relatively soon here. We'll see if he's able to secure it. And the APCs, Engineer APCs, they're going to be the name of the game. There's one in the north. It's getting hunted down by the Seeker Tank. If BikeRush owns can shut down this expansion, that's enough for the GG to really, maybe not be calm, but it's enough to be basically where you're in an almost unlosable position, especially as a player like BikeRush owns, who can win in most games, most Command & Conquer 3 games anyways. And then it's like, if he's able to shut down the blue expansion of his opponent, if he's able to push in with his own blue expansion, well, then he's basically in an unlosable position from that point. But the MCV moving through the middle of the map for BikeRush owns is going to be so important for Shock Treatment to spot, because if he's able to shut down this MCV, oh, if he's able to just skirt by, he might be going for the eco. He's got a 5 Seeker hit squad, but is that going to be enough DPS to really lock down BikeRush owns? As you can see, he drafts a watchtower. He's got 2 Predator tanks on the front line as well. That's going to be hard for Shock Treatment to break, especially with more units coming in from the War Factory. More Predator tanks onto the front lines. Going to be nearly impossible to break with just those 5 Seeker tanks. Now, potentially, Shock Treatment can do something sneaky. He's trying to do it now as BikeRush owns pushes further and further forward. And it is going to be straight into dev tanks. He's going for the dual War Factory dev tank production, and that could very well be his saving grace, as BikeRush owns is not really able to do anything here. He wasn't actually able to grab anything, and it looks like that APC, I mean, I don't know what happened to the engineer, but he didn't grab the Tib Spike. He wasn't able to grab any of the other structures. This is just kind of awkward for BikeRush owns, but of course it's match point. He wants the gold. He wants to pay back, or he wants to take the payout for first. He doesn't want to have to pay it out to Shock Treatment when he's the one sponsoring the prize pool. But Shock Treatment in this game, he's got a reasonable force. If he can only hold on to his economy, he may be able to just push BikeRush back. Now BikeRush owns going to be dropping down both of the racks. And, oh, these dev tanks, they're going to have to be careful. He's got a reasonable number of them, though, and he's continuing to produce more and more. They are charged up, which means they'll eat through the buildings pretty darn quickly here. And BikeRush owns, BikeRush owns wasn't really able to break this attack. I mean, he was able to break the majority of it, but that lightning spike is still going to be there, being a little bit annoying. It's going to be doing that little bit of damage over time. It does not expire, so it's going to be there as long as this game goes on. BikeRush owns, good move. Moving in here, picking off the individual dev tanks. He may be able to just simply break the back of Shock Treatment, but he sold off his MCV with only this War Factory gone, and the War Factory back home is really his only vehicle production. He is going to be able to push back Shock Treatment. Now Shock Treatment is actually in a lot of trouble here as Predator tanks closing in from all sides. He's got rocket troopers being pushed in from the north, and BikeRush owns seem to have broken the entire army of Shock Treatment. I don't know that Shock Treatment can actually turn this game around. I mean, he's got double War Factory production. He just doesn't have as much eco as he would have liked. He invested quite a bit into that blue eco, and it's been completely shut down. He's got no build radius up there. He's got no refineries left over. The harvesters even got cleaned up, so he wasn't able to run them away and get those extra loads of Tiberium. I mean, he's got 4 harvesters down here, 2 refinery, which is pretty good. And actually, maybe if he was able to call in another buzzer swarm and clear out these rocket squads, but I just don't see that really working with the amount of forces that BikeRush owns has. But BikeRush owns pushing further forward. The dev tanks taking some nice shots off here. They actually are still alive. They're getting those heals regularly, and they're actually able to pick off a couple of these Predator tanks. Now, they may actually be able to swing back around and clean up another couple of Predator tanks. BikeRush owns going to be losing some rocket squads to those buzzers, but again, it's just so much damage. Oh no! Oh, Shock Treatment has actually forced this into a do-or-die situation. BikeRush owns has this one Brax. BikeRush may have just put himself into a situation to lose this game. I don't know with the dev tanks. Oh, this is going to be dangerous. He needs to keep his infantry alive. His infantry may very well be the ticket to getting himself out of this game. Is Sh0ckTr34tm3nt able to clean up pretty much all of the economy from BikeRush? I mean, there's literally no harvesters left for BikeRush, which means he cannot produce any more units. And Sh0ckTr34tm3nt has massed out a huge number of buzzers. Good focus fire from BikeRush going to be able to clean up one and another dev tank. BikeRush may be able to break through here. He may have just enough forces. He seems to have done it. The Predator tanks can't really be stopped by much that Sh0ckTr34tm3nt actually has. Sh0ckTr34tm3nt has to be finished at this point. No, he's got the portal, he's got the income for descents, and that's going to be his one saving grace. If he can get out enough descents to deal with the Predator tanks, then he may have this in the bag, because the only thing BikeRush can build after that is infantry, and buzzers do a remarkably good job at dealing with those infantry. He can split off potentially another portal over, you know, like over here, and then flank in with buzzers as buzzer hives sit in the middle. Did Sh0ckTr34tm3nt actually do this? Now, as long as BikeRush has both of these Predator tanks, he's going to be in an all-right position, because the Predator tanks cannot be dealt with very easily by the buzzers. But if BikeRush loses the Predator tanks to either A, more dev tanks, which are now being produced, now that, Sh0ckTr34tm3nt needs to keep his harvesters alive, though. But Sh0ckTr34tm3nt has bought himself so much time. I'm not sure why Sh0ckTr34tm3nt was moving in with just the 2 descents. He needs to clear out the rifleman squads before he moves in with the descents, because they're just going to get shredded. I mean, potentially he was banking on something like BikeRush just leaving his Predator tanks there on the front lines and not pulling them back, but that's, I don't know if that's the best thing to bet on BikeRush doing, is miscontrolling when there's, like, literally nothing else for him to do in this game. This is a really dangerous position for BikeRush. He may actually be being beaten back in this particular match. Now, Sh0ckTr34tm3nt is going to be kind of pulling up his shorts and just running for it. There's going to be the Buzzer Storm clearing out the majority of the infantry. More and more Buzzer Squads getting pulled up from this one Buzzer Hive. It looks like they absorbed a couple of shots there. Maybe not the biggest deal, but more and more Buzzer reinforcements coming in, and BikeRush has been defeated. And in a couple of key moments there, Sh0ckTr34tm3nt able to defeat BikeRush and take back a point 2-3 in this best of 7 series. It's still very dangerous for Sh0ckTr34tm3nt, but if we can go to an ace match, Sh0ckTr34tm3nt may have just won over the confidence to take down BikeRush. But he still has an uphill battle. He has to take game number 6 off of BikeRush to even that score up, 3-3. And then game number 7 will be headed your way. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, as BikeRush has, in this series alone, even if you've never seen BikeRush before, he has demonstrated monstrous ability to just destroy games in this series. So let's jump into game number 6. Which takes us to small town USA, and spawning in the southwest position as the red nod, it is BikeRush. And the man who is almost able to even things up in the north, it is Sh0ckTr34tm3nt. Look at that pink nod color. Alright, so I do not know this build at all. The deploy outpost immediately build. I must be missing something. Like, there must be something to this build that I just don't know. I mean, sure, I think you get a militant squad when you sell off the outpost. But is that really the best way to get a militant squad? I'm not convinced. Sh0ckTr34tm3nt is certainly better at this game than me, so he would know better than I. I have to imagine that's a misclick. Maybe someone can confirm to me that that was not a misclick and he didn't mean to deploy that there. But if that was, I mean, as a $750 militant squad, I don't know that that is actually worth it. BikeRush pushing out. He's got a bike and a buggy. He's not going immediately into the eco. There's his extra refinery. He's drafting another power plant. We got to keep a close eye on BikeRush. We got to keep an eye on if that con yard suddenly disappears. This is double refinery, triple refinery even, as the base creep does begin. Oh, BikeRush, he's confirming the base creep. He's seen the crane. He's seen the refineries. He may very well know that he's going to be behind if he's not able to get himself on equal economic footing. But he's keeping his MCV for now. Oh, is he going Flame? He could be going Fast Tech to try to shut this down with a Tib Catalyst missile, which would be pretty brutal. But he may also just be going for those Flame tanks. Attack Bike going to be poking away at a couple of those Harvesters. Going to be a little bit annoying there. BikeRush is going to be forced to run away there, as we do indeed have that Militant Squad popping on out. Flame tanks heading along the southern side of the map. He wants to shut down this expansion. He wants to shut down this build radius even. You don't even have to, like, quote-unquote lock down the expansion. You just have to kill the build radius, because that completely resets shock treatment. That resets all of the time he spent trying to get down there, all of the resources he spent. I mean, he doesn't even have the crane anymore, so it would take him so long to get down there. Now, there's two bikes here, but shock treatment isn't paying attention. Both of them get completely flamed down, and now shock treatment is going to have to deal with this flame tank, which is down to half HP, which means the bikes can have a little bit easier of a job cleaning this up. And as long as one of these war factories stands, BikeRush has not killed off shock treatment yet. There's two more flame tanks out on the map. The war factory is not producing anything. So there's the sell-off of... Oh, no, there's going to be the Tib Catalyst missile. Nope, it's actually just going to be potentially Tib Catalyst missile was up here. No, the flame tank does get shut down. Tib Vapor Bomb drops onto the war factories. That means they're going to be very easy to shut down. One is already gone. There's the Tib Catalyst missile to shut down these two refineries up here. All of their harvesters as well. Absolutely brutal use of one-clicks here by BikeRush, and suddenly there's essentially no economy here for shock treatment. He's got one refinery. How many harvesters does he have? Well, he's got 3, which means the harvesters are going to start lining up eventually. Maybe not immediately, but they will be lining up at some point or another. And with this game number 6, with this kind of do-or-die position that shock treatment is in, if he loses this game, he's out of the tournament. That's it. The finals are over. BikeRush takes another gold. Shock treatment needs to win this game. He's coming in. He's cleaning up harvesters. That's a good way to even the economic game, but he's so far behind in that infrastructure. He invested so much into this kind of base crawl down to the south so that he could get his expansion up and running, so that he could get his production up and running with the triple war factory in the south, and now he's so far behind in the infrastructure. He's rebuilding his economy. I mean, he does have to rebuild a couple of refineries there just to get his main base rolling again on that eco. This war factory has not even been producing that many units, and he dropped so much money trying to establish these war factories. Oh, that rally point. I don't know if that's a good place to send that harvester, as he may just need that harvester down south. There's not a whole lot for it to do up here, although I guess technically he is 4-2, so he could take that 5th harvester. It would still be useful. Shock treatment, gaining the edges he can, cleaning up the Tib spikes. Good, solid move there. I'm always a fan of players who utilize units when and where they can, even if it's not, you know, like quote-unquote, like big damage. If it's just a little bit of damage, if you can get away with it, then absolutely great. He may actually be able to clean up a couple of these power plants there, and that wouldn't be too bad either. Again, is it game-winning? No, not in any way. But if he's able to clean up some of those power plants, that's going to be a nice situation for shock treatment there. Harvesters from BikeRush. I mean, I guess it's a stealth scout, but okay, so it just turns around. I imagine he's maybe, oh my gosh, he's actually harvesting his opponent's Tiberium. That is just a little bit much there, as shock treatment does actually take a couple of pot shots off there at that harvester, maybe able to clean it up, which, I mean, that is an expense for BikeRush, but again, BikeRush has so much infrastructure advantage over shock treatment that shock treatment needs to take big victories against BikeRush. And for a second, I thought that was another Tib Cata missile dropping down a refinery, but that's way too much Tiberium to be from that. It is indeed going to be that seed Tiberium getting dropped down. And unfortunately, what was that I just got hurt? That I just heard getting called in? Potentially just a Tib seed. Nope. Oh! That Tib Vapor Bomb to kill a single militant squad. Nice reaction there by BikeRush. And also, with this multi-MCV that he's going on, rebuilding refineries is not as big of a deal. Yeah, it's annoying, but it's not as big of a deal. And as long as he's still got some economy established, he's still going to be in a better position because he's had such an economy advantage over this entire game. And, I mean, infrastructure advantage over the majority of this game. And BikeRush is going to be in an all-right position as this game continues on. Now, Sh0ckTr34tm3nt doing a very good job coming back with his technology. He has matched the tier 3 tech level of his opponent. He has not in any way matched the economy of his opponent. Not even able to clean up the tib spikes of BikeRush owns. And that's just a little bit unfortunate here. A great scout coming in for BikeRush owns. Oh, he's even going to see the MCV on the move. Now, fortunately for Sh0ckTr34tm3nt, because he's got this refinery, he's already got that refinery queued. I think I just referred to the crane as a refinery. But even though he's got, because he's got that crane, he's got that refinery queued, which of course means he can deploy it immediately. He may even decide to sell it off if he wants to just keep the harvester from that refinery as he expands on a little bit more. BikeRush owns going for the big transition, a mine drop as well, most likely pretty much on top of this tib field. Going to be trying to land on these harvesters right as they are going to be going to work. And Sh0ckTr34tm3nt may just be dropping down a shredder turret to deal with this. It's going to be a little bit annoying because this harvester is very low on HP now. May actually get cleaned up as it goes back to auto harvest. War Factory goes down. Goodbye, harvester. And again, this means such a great deal more for Sh0ckTr34tm3nt. Losing one harvester for Sh0ckTr34tm3nt is such a bigger deal than it is for BikeRush owns. It means so much more, as that's a bigger percentage of Sh0ckTr34tm3nt's economy, especially considering how far behind he's been. Another harvester goes down, more mines going off, just doing that extra bit of damage to BikeRush owns. And BikeRush owns continuing to base creep forward, triple obelisk at a time. That multi-MCV is just so powerful as he even drops down power plants, messing with the pathing of the units a little bit there, and even operation centers for the Black Hand squads to help them flame down these buildings. Sh0ckTr34tm3nt blocking what he can with the war factories, but that's the end of the game. And BikeRush owns cleans up the Winter Meltdown tournament, takes the first place, and will get to keep his own money as he did sponsor the prize pool. So he doesn't have to pay it out there. Although I think there was a random draw prize as well. I don't know who won that. But that will do it for this series, a best of 7 in Tiberium Wars. I hope you guys enjoyed it, because I always like to watch myself some Tib Wars action every now and again. It is a fun game, and I do have many fond memories from this game from back in the day. It's a good time usually, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. But that may very well be the last tournament that BikeRush owns plays in Command & Conquer. Now we'll have to see. I mean, he said he retired, and then he played a tournament, so I don't know exactly what that means, but maybe he was talking about specifically only retiring from Kane's Wrath, in which case he could come back for all the Tib Wars tournament action that he wants. And that will do it for this series. That'll do it for this video. I don't know what that enunciation was. That was just kind of weird. At any rate, thank you all very much for watching. This is Sybert, signing out.